I'll give you a presentation today about optical encryption. That was the title, which is the first line of defense for network services. Before I start with that, let me just give you some sort of introduction and the red thread throughout the presentation today. When I woke up this morning, I was really nervous. Wasn't really nervous about coming here, having a presentation in front of you. That's a pure pleasure and also a challenge sometime. I was more nervous about getting on a plane. I'm simply afraid of flying. And the reason behind that is that I have some strange illusions about the airplane will crash. And one of the things is that in order for me to do my job, because I travel every week, I had to replace these illusions by something that I can trust. And one of the things that I learned was that I can really trust the airline industry and the airline transport because it's really secure. And the way they have built up the trust for me to understand that it's really about airline, it's really about secure transport is all the aircraft I'm sitting in are being certified by somebody. There's a lot of regulations in the industry. I'm always told to put on my seatbelt, even though I'm a frequent flyer. I'm always told to sit down and listen to the security instructions. There's a lot of processes in that industry, etc. And one of the things they are doing is that they have a comprehensive way of approaching security. And that really replaces these illusions by trust. So this presentation isn't really about the airline industry, but is about the why we need to have optical encryption and what we can learn from the airline industry in order to understand what are the key aspects we need to focus on when it comes to really applying a comprehensive, secure transport for network services. Why optical encryption? So I know that there is a lot of people sitting up there, and maybe you cannot see this, but what I'm talking about when I say optical encryption is that we transport a lot of data and connect a lot of networks, a lot of data centers over this yellow optical fiber. And on this optical fiber, which can be dug in the ground, can be pulled in the data center, ceiling, etc. One of the things that we don't know is that this is actually a vulnerable piece in the network. We tend to think that this fiber is very secure by itself, but it's just jello coating. So if a monkey can peel a jello banana, I can tell you that a hacker can peel off the yellow coating on the optical fiber, and then all the light is free there to tap off. And one of the things we're doing on these fibers today is that we're carrying a lot of data. We carry about 17 or more terabits per second. So you can imagine if you can tap a fiber, it's a massive intrusion, and there could be massive damages caused by just a simple thing as intruding an optical fiber. At Nokia, the answer to that is to add optical encryption. The reason why we're adding optical encryption to these fibers is that we believe that it really makes security affordable. We're reducing the cost. And also one of the things that we are not doing when we add optical encryption is that we are not adding latency as such. And we are keeping the performance of the network, etc. So using optical encryption as your first line of defense for network services is really a good idea. We have at Nokia kind of a defense in-depth strategy. So we're not saying that we're going to replace all the other layers. We're just saying that we're going to complement this, complement the encryption that happens on the data that is in rest in the data center or in the cloud. But as soon as it starts to move, it makes sense to move into optical encryption as a first line of defense. I spoke about illusions, and one of the most important thing I think is security is quite complex topic, and sometimes it's handled by experts, but it's typically non-experts who are implementing it and basically making the commercial decision to apply it. And sometimes they do have some illusions about security, and I'm just going to make a short analogy about home security. So when I left home, I was for sure locking my door with my standard lock, which I've had for many years, and the door is still there. And I'm sure that nobody is ever going to brute force the lock itself. It's almost as secure as AES 256. But what many people don't understand is that some of the locks aren't really secure. And a lot of the locks we have at home, about 90% of them, can be forced in less than 90 seconds. So we have a kind of illusion that when we leave home, everything is secure. The same thing we have with network security. So almost all the optical transport solutions that claim that they are secure when applying optical encryption, you have to look into the details. Many of these solutions don't meet the current recommendations of minimum key strengths. So it's not the lock itself. You need to have a well-balanced approach towards cryptographic solution. You need to look at a tamper-resistant lock, the cipher itself, but also make sure that you have a quality key. Because one of the things that I've noticed is that I hardly ever replace the lock, but sometimes I copy the keys, etc. So the quality of key is fundamentally important to optical encryption if you want to apply that to your first line defense. So let's begin with the key aspects and have a conversation about the key strength. So there are many ways of generating, distributing, and storing keys, and that's very important that you're looking at that from a comprehensive aspects. There are both asymmetric keys or distributions or generation or the way you produce the keys. There are also symmetric alternatives. And to come back to the home analogy, what we're seeing in the industry now with the introduction of quantum computers, I'm not saying that there is a quantum computer. Some people claim that there is already quantum computers that you can actually go out and lease that kind of computing capability. Computers get more and more, and they will be able to help hackers. One of the things is very hard to brute force the lock itself, but the key you can actually brute force. So one of the things that we're seeing here is that when you're comparing, even though an asymmetric key looks very strong, like the RSA 2048 based on 2048 bits, when you do the analogy, you really see that if that would be a key under attack, first of all, it doesn't have the same amount of the pins as a good quality key based on a symmetric AES 256. And by the way, when it's under a quantum computer attack, it almost becomes really worthless. There's no pins left. It's almost like a quantum computer acts like a file on the actual key. One of the things that we're seeing is that working on symmetric keys, it's really quantum safe. It would require millions of years actually to successfully make a computer attack on that. And for me, just looking at that, these are the things we need to look at when we're looking at how to move away from illusions to actually trusting the system. So once again, comparing key strengths based on these two different techniques. So one of the things that I just want to stress here is that obviously when you're generating a key like the RSA 248, Fundamentally, based on more bits, you probably need to have a higher CPU power in order to do that. And that's why fundamentally, when you're looking into these kind of solutions, is it really future-proof? Because the CPU power on certain things are actually not increasing, because at the same time we want to keep the systems cost efficient as we're putting it out in the field, also from a power consumption, and typically CPU drives that as well. On the other hand, a symmetric solution requires very low CPU power in order to be computed. But what you're seeing is that the equivalent or the key strength of that is only 112 compared to 256. And in order to resolve that for the asymmetric is really to put more bits, but that would require more CPU power. So that's one of the things that we need to look at. I didn't say that, or say that quantum computer attacks is doing that. There is a lot of expert here that is doing that for us, and we are relying on other sources as well. That is also one of fundamental things for me when I'm going to trust something, is that I want to have a second opinion, a third opinion. I want to have experts looking at this, saying things. So one of the things they are saying is that we really must balance the cipher and the key strength. So it's, even though you have a lock, of AES 256, if your key strength is lower than 256, you cannot really use it for top secret anymore. So Etsy made a very good table just looking at the different algorithms out there on the market. I'm not saying that all of them are useless. We use them in different different ways and in different applications. But if you want to apply it on a fiber that is carrying terabits of data, where you can, where you can tap off thousands of medical records in a split second, sure, you want to have the strongest key to play with. And one of the things that I get really when I look at RSA and elliptic curve for that sake is that under a quantum computer attack, there is a 0-bit strength. And to me, it doesn't matter if it would be 5 or 4. I lose the trust in that. Another important aspect is about how we distribute these keys, and it's actually linked to the other. So I know I'm going to get short in time here. So just one of the things that I want to point out here is the point of trust. So having a centralized, as in a symmetric key distribution, and fundamentally looking at the key manager sitting in a centralized location, you will have one single point of trust. For sure, the attacker is going to attack that, but that is better than having several distribution points. And you can also think about the scalability, and from an enterprise point of view, having several key managers all over, it's fundamentally better to look into the centralized one. And if you look at centralized, we already know that compute power we get constantly more and more. So if we would need to have other key algorithms porting on that to provide even stronger algorithms, we can do that. So that is another thing, that key management is also very linked. One of the things I want to say as well is that when you look at using optical encryption as your first line of defense, you have to insist on independently certified solutions. Coming back to the airplanes, they're being certified by certifying bodies, and that is really what replaces the illusions by trust. And what you need to validate here is not that you're meeting some standard criteria, etc., but you also need to make sure that you're allowing them to look into your manufacturing processes. So we use the right people, we have the right test plans, we have the right assembly, we are delivering accordingly, the people who are working on it are really coming from the ORIN which we have specified, etc. All these things needs to be qualified, and obviously there's a lot of the certification bodies that or institutes that are doing that, among ANSI in France. So when it comes to so in order to conclude here, just to show, where Nokia is placed here. So if you really want to trust your first line of defense for network services, you're looking for something that is quantum safe, certified encryption solution, you should turn to Nokia. We have very effective layer 1 encryption solutions already today. I didn't say it, but for sure there are some burglar alarms, so we can monitor intrusion in the fiber. There's a centralized unified key management, as in the 1830 security management service, and everything is fully independently certified. And by that, just want to conclude and thank you all for listening to this talk. And if you want to see and believe, you're welcome to a demo at B20, where we have actually stripped a fiber or peeled a banana, so to say. I'm not going to say that my colleague is a monkey, but thank you very much.